again, just...
Yeah, Alan, a very quick one. One thing I'd like to do is have a quick WebRTC show and tell, because there are lots of people here who've got WebRTC offerings, and I'd really like to see them. And in return, if you show me yours, I'll show you ours, sort of thing. So that's something. I love demos.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So if anybody's interested afterwards, I'll show you our WebRTC conferencing solution, and then you can show us yours and see whose is best.
I should point out that the fact that James loves demos was illustrated this morning.
Oh.
His keynote was voted the most popular.
Yo, congratulations. Any more questions? Well, I should say, any questions from the audience? Again, giving you an opportunity to ask this panel. Any questions that are on your mind? Oh, we have Nexmo at the back there. Just shout out and I'll repeat it so they can pick it up on there. Oh, you can... Hang on a sec. Thank you, Ben.
We talked a lot about go-to-market yesterday. We talked a lot about go-to-market strategies, and actually, what I hear is you can't go to market because you still need to kind of unblock the organizational barriers that you're facing inside the organization. What about acquisition? Is that an option? And I'm not referring to Nexmo, but just...
No, very good question.
So, acquisition.
Yeah,
absolutely an option. In fact, that's a way of sidestepping all of the issues of trying to do it yourself. And we've just put a $100 million fund together for exactly that purpose. Also, with Dialogue, which has been at the sharp end of Asiata's sort of, embracing other technologies and trying to speed things along, we've also created a little sort of partner threshold scenario with the contract, so that you are basically partnering with the telco, but you can be free to do what the hell you want up to a point. But up to that point, we talk. Mm-hmm. And then we can find these good applications and bring them out. So we'll embrace WebRTC. We'll do it with a partner probably in the first instance and see whether it sticks, as you say.
Go again.
Do incubators work?
I'll tell you, there's only one way incubation works, and that is don't let group near it. Because the biggest issue is control. Yeah. Right? It's just you get bludgeoned into mediocrity if you let the big boys control you. So what you need to make an incubator work is enlightened people who are empowered to help that incubator work regardless. Yeah. And the other thing is that with acquisition, and this is something that people have been missing for years, is that you can't just buy someone and then hope it works. You definitely can't try and integrate them in end-to-end into your organization, because that won't work. What you need is a commando team that is empowered to help them integrate where it works and not when it doesn't.
You've kind of just described an agile software development process for a business model, and I think that that's great, except no 30, 40,000 person organization is going to be able to adopt that unless they do say, okay, that group over there, don't touch them.
Well, it's one still there. They put up with me today.
Actually, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Telefonica there, because they're actually, the Topbox is starting to do a reverse integration. In the former head of Topbox, Ian Small, is now head of communication services for Telefonica Global. So it's sort of like a reverse takeover of the voice and video business.
It's with his mindset. Exactly, so what he's done is embrace someone who's been entrepreneurial, because people talk about entrepreneurialism. And there's a lot of little pockets within these organizations that are incredibly entrepreneurial. In fact, they find ways.
Could you just put the mic so we can pick it up?
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of getting anything done in a telco. Anybody who manages to do anything in a telco is an entrepreneur.
I think the intrapreneurial.
That's another way of putting it, but quite often they break out. Once they've built up all those bridges, they break out and then go and do something themselves. And there's a lot of that going on.
So I'm sorry, Alex, it's only a $100 million fund, so they're not going to be able to afford you, okay? So, Anna?
Yeah, so do you think WebRTC may lead to cannibalizations of voice revenue of a carrier?
Everything leads to cannibalization of voice revenue. It's just... People have to get out of this cannibalization mindset. It's just mad.
Skype, right? Yeah. Skype's been around for how many years?
It's already
done.
leading.
It's done.
I mean, Skype's been around for so many years. That's cannibalized a lot of things already. I don't think WebRTC is going to move the dial anymore.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of service providers' own WebRTC services cannibalizing their own revenues, unlikely. And if they don't do it, someone else will anyway. So WebRTC is around. And from a carrier point of view, I tend to class it as a magnifier. It makes the opportunities bigger and it makes the threats worse and it makes everything faster. And if you're living in that universe, then good.
And all the
I mean,
charts we saw. Oh,
sorry, go for it. I was just going to say, Karel, I mean, you've got a lot of experience in managing the cannibalization issue. I'm just interested in your perspective in terms of how you manage that within for Le Bon.
Well, I think, if you remember yesterday during my presentation, I showed the analogies with light. And we go from the candle, and suddenly when light become a commodity, you have all those other way of using light, and actually there is much more usage. And it's actually the same. What we've been saying about messaging was that people are being cannibalized by IM. It's true in a way from a revenue perspective, but from a usage point of view, the usage is actually growing. And some of the number I showed yesterday was that actually, yes, we did cannibalize some of the usage of circuit switch international calling with our offers with Libon. But it was well compensated by the fact that we did grow the usage on other part, and those monetization allow us to make it actually a positive contribution to the overall telco business model.
But that's an after-the-fact issue. I mean, the problem is before the fact, you've got this great idea, we can do this over-the-top type service, we can get customers on, we can bring basically sort of people in who aren't Orange existing customers. People look at it and go, well, wait a minute, that's potentially substituting some of my revenue. You can't do it. So
yes.
How do you get through that initial condition?
Yeah, well, you need a sponsor. Pretty much. So why I was talking about Soch yesterday, and I'm super grateful for the product management there, because Soch believed in us, and they thought we were right. Yeah. And so they gave us the opportunity to test it on a small scale first, and then we look at the results. We put all the data analysis necessary, the KPIs, you were asking how I knew that Viber was going on. So that also means we needed, DPI and stuff like that. So we had to set up all the data collection elements necessary to prove that we were right. And you need to have a sponsor that is willing to test it. And then it will help you to convince the other guys.
Understood. No, that's great. Any other comments around the...
Very quick one. Yeah, the other traditional way of doing it is that you form a completely new business unit away from the legacy stuff, and you run it completely separately. Because otherwise, if you put the little furry animal in with the big dinosaur will squash it or eat it. So you've got to keep them separate initially. So that's the other way of doing it.
Yep, no, that's a good point. Do we have any other questions from the audience? It's nice to see some engagement there. There you go. Thank you, Ben.
Hi. I noticed that yesterday all of the talks in some way reference to lean and agile references in their talks. So what do you think both in developer side and the enterprise side, operator side, what is the effect of adopting that process, lean or agile processes? Could you comment on the benefits of adopting those?
I mean, in the first instance, on the basis that we're not going to change legacy process around legacy systems anytime soon, it just means that internally we can show what we mean by just building it. So you can actually demonstrate it as opposed to go through 55,000 slides to try and explain it. Because people just don't get half the stuff we talk about anyway. Yeah. So Agile helps in that regard. And we've set up units around the group that are empowered just to go and build stuff. And in fact, the whole reason for making the platform and now open sourcing it is to try and encourage that mindset. Because that way, you can actually work on the POC mindset, even though I hate POCs, but in real terms, but you can basically build stuff. So that really helps. And what we're hoping is going to happen in terms of agile process is that once we've got regulatory and finance and operations and support and capacity management and all those various things that you have to sort out on every service you ever do, once or twice or 3 times with discrete services we've exposed, we can then map that on and actually make exposing services quicker, and then the whole thing will snowball. So pretty much that's the idea. It just gets people able to make a decision quicker at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. What I'd like to do is then move on to a point that's come up and I think was highlighted quite nicely in both the Dangerous demo from James, but also Alex referred to it in one of his beta APIs, is moving beyond the telco APIs, voice, messaging, charging, into other APIs. And we were seeing profile and some of the challenges in using within the SS7 network, some of the profile information. So I'm just interested in the panelists' views on beyond where we are today with telco APIs, what are going to be some of the other APIs we start seeing being exposed?
Well, there's a gift for me. There's so many. One of the ones that is really taxing me at the moment is dealing with how we expose the quality of service parameters to developers. So one of the key things you want to do on an LTE network is to be able to change the quality of service, the QCIs, so that if you then want to run real-time voice or video across the top, you can do that with a very high degree of success. And that's one of the key ones that we're looking at very, very closely. It's challenging enough to get at the QCIs when you're running your own LTE network, but when you decide you want to do that globally, that's a bit more complicated. So that's a starter for 10. QCIs, modifying the QoS. And by the way, I think we can probably charge quite a lot of money if we can do that globally. It's worth quite a lot of money to us. So there's a good starter for 10.
So for what use cases?
Well, lots of use cases. People who've got lots of money who are willing to pay for bandwidth, guaranteed bandwidth when they need it. A simple scenario could be the cup final football match. You've got photographers around the outside wanting to move large binaries back to their newspapers. And the stadium is full of 80,000 people all trying to send real-time video at the same time. So
There are event companies that will provide you excessive internet access fees.
Yeah, okay. Well, perhaps it's not such a good example, but there are a number of scenarios where people are willing to pay for money to get the quality of service. Well, I have. You clearly don't go to the same parties that I go to, Dean.
No, he
and
doesn't.
in fact, I'd like to go to some of your parties, looking at your Facebook feed. Yeah.
We think identity is going to be a big one, and where identity is going, which is around things that you attach to it. Mm-hmm. So I think there's going to be decisions that users make. George made a very good pitch around identity,
yes.
and we totally subscribe to that. In fact, it's built into the heart of our API platform again for those reasons. It's, but we think that attributes and identity and key personal information, I think data will be a subset of that. So there'll be certain bits of data that can be attached to your identity, which we need to harvest and then present as coherent APIs. I think that's going to be really important. But I also think there's going to be mashups that we can present. So they're complex APIs, SDKs, whatever you want to call them, that start to present 2 or 3 things in the one bundle, if you like, that will help enable the ecosystem to use them quicker and better.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of focus on just the things that the carriers can do, but there's a huge amount of really good stuff outside of the carrier sphere, which can be mashed together with the carrier stuff as a kind of a force multiplier. What you end up with as a composite is much, much, much bigger.
The composite stuff's where it's at, and we do need ultimately to get into the mindset that what partnership actually means, which is that we may be using some telco services and some attributes that may be held, hopefully in a trusted way, by a telco, along with something else. And the sort of Internet of Things thing comes to mind, because there's going to be a whole host of things that you'll need multiple players just to make happen. And your demo was a good example. There was, 3 or 4 different things that were brought to bear to make one thing happen. We need to get into that mindset, and we need solutioneers to help do that, people that understand how to build solutions and user experience people.
I think part of that is having telcos being both buyers and sellers of APIs. I think there's the outbound APIs we all talk about, but actually, at the moment, telcos don't use that many APIs from other sources, right? Maybe the fraud management, or Experian or something like that. Probably Google Maps for where is my nearest store. But and there's a couple that have their portals with actually log on with Facebook, interestingly. But I think that two-way market of APIs is an important one, whether it's you doing the mashups or someone else.
Well, that's what we're doing with the platform. In fact, one of the reasons for open sourcing it was to actually create a marketplace that we can both enable ourselves to think bigger and wider and better, and actually to be able to join people up. So the whole reason for doing it was for that.
We at Locatrix spent a reasonable hunk of R&D effort, limited R&D effort, going down the route of doing Facebook apps for carriers. And one of the things we were trying to get across was the ability to be able to look at the types of services that they were wanting to offer, for example, on a portal to the say media, ringback tones and things like that. We were trying to get them to look at, well, if you were actually doing a sign-on using your Facebook thing, getting access to some of that data, the things you could do around personalising, for example, the types of tiles you show at the top of the screen because they're a 18-year-old girl versus Alan Quayle, was kind of interesting. You actually do a lot of, but that's all about service personalisation, creating an experience for a user that's really cool. I do want to flag, however, that we became the subject of an aggressive act via a patent troll, and Alan didn't want me to run that as a panel session at this event because he was afraid I would cry too much. So that's another challenge for using other APIs, because there are folks out there who have got patents on there and won't give a rat's if it's a 10-person company in Brisbane, but it's a carrier, bang, and they throw legal funds at it like you wouldn't believe.
There's a business in there somewhere.
Yes.
Ensuring the developer community against patent trolls.
Well, absolutely, and we've actually got some weblogs on that on the TEDx.
The biggest delta for me open sourcing this platform was exactly that.
Yeah.
Is, can you guarantee that what you've written into this code we won't get attacked with?
Mm-hmm.
And I've said up to this point, and then I will ensure for the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just risk analysis, yeah.
If I can jump back to something, you touched on identity as a service, and this came up in discussion earlier today. I think that identity is a very interesting problem, in part because it's so nuanced, and it looks simple on the surface. You're just asserting that somebody is who they say they are, but there's different kinds of identity. There are different personalities. There's work versus home. But even beyond that, even if you simplify that for the sake of discussion, what's interesting about carriers is that they have a relationship with the end user that not every internet company can claim. That is, they have a monetary relationship. And the very nature of what a telco does, which is to deliver some kind of connectivity, means that relationship is not likely to change. So it puts them in a unique position to assert identity, and I think that's a real opportunity. Now, the management of that is probably an entire discussion, right? Yeah. But I think it's an interesting opportunity. One that I'd be more inclined to follow up with than a company where I feel like I have no control over it. I don't pay Facebook, so what recourse do I have with that? Yeah.
I would just like to add, I was thinking and listening to you about identity and strategies, and when you and WebRTC, Google started WebRTC by an acquisition, and from this acquisition open sourced and built a whole ecosystem, which now is huge. So I think this can be an interesting way of thinking between what you said about open sourcing, about creating an ecosystem. But WebRTC, like 3 years ago, was the company was there, the technology was there, but the way to open the ecosystem was not there.
One of the interesting things about identity is that in its fundamental form, it's a local thing. Because you've got a passport number and you've got an identity number. And as I said before, I have never given my passport number out that many times as when being an agent. For any transaction that's above a certain point, passport, right? So that's why it's actually potentially a natural place for it to sit, because that identity, that fundamental one, is local. But then there's the global one, the roaming one, the internet one, the other one. And I think people are going to end up having two. In fact, they do.
Multiple, yeah.
I just want to come back to James was talking about quality of service API. I think there's an interim step before you get to that, which is a network congestion API. Of actually, if you offer to developers information about whether the network either is or is likely to be congested, then they start to be able to make intelligent decisions about what they do next. Quick QoS, yes, in theory, but the problems there are huge. You should at least be able to give some indication of our problems. It's like a road sign saying problems likely Wednesday afternoon, 5 till 9 p.m. roadworks.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as usual, I leapt in first for the first thing that came into my mind. Fire off a few rounds and take cover before then engaging brain. There's a much better example of something we can do, and that's what I would call rich presence, which my definition of rich presence is very different from the GSMA RCS definition. My idea is that you really want to be able to see, as a system or somebody else, how different people are connected. So you might have multiple devices. You're certainly going to have multiple transmission channels, and you want to. And as you go through your day, one time you're going to be connected to Wi-Fi. Next you're going to be an LTE. Next moment you're down on poor old horrible 2G, and that's all significant. And at the same time, you need to be able to take into account what Dean was saying. What's going on around on that bit of transmission medium? Is it congested? Is it failing on you? Because again, you need to know that if you're going to efficiently run somebody's communication. So a very big part of the challenge for operators going forward is being faced with this huge, lots of multiple communications channels, many of which they have no control of themselves, and then choosing the most efficient channel to use at the right time. And again, that's worth quite a lot of money to some people. And you're going,
so there you go.
Yeah, that's a cracker, that one. So, yeah, it's this business of using other people's pipes that you may not be in control of. And it's something that we do on a daily basis because we have to, because we're but a tiny little global mobile network operator. The only one and only. So it's something we do all the time, by second nature. But it's not something that a big Vodafone, there's nobody from Vodafone here, and so I can be very, very rude to them. It's not the sort of thing that Vodafone would think of doing, because they just want to control everything and it's all theirs. But we don't. We'll use anybody's network. We're not proud.
Cool.
So someone should acquire Open Signal, because I think they've got some really clever crowdsourced databases of radio capabilities.
No, that's true. It's a good one.